Desperate mother bear brings her unconscious cub to a man. What he does is unbelievable. David Thompson woke up startled by a strange noise coming from the porch of his cabin. He heard a low, steady growl. His body froze as he slowly opened the porch door. An adult spectacled bear stood there, her gaze fixed and disturbingly aware, while her cub lay motionless beside her. David blinked several times, unable to believe his eyes. Spectacled bears weren't common in that region of the United States, but he knew the wildlife refuge where he had previously worked had released some rescued specimens from international trafficking years ago. "My God," he murmured, assessing the situation. The bear showed no aggression, only an almost human look of pleading. David observed the lifeless cub and noticed a greenish liquid around its mouth. His professional instinct kicked in. Immediately, despite the fear he felt, he ate something toxic, probably those wild ferns growing near the creek, he said to himself, momentarily forgetting he was facing a 150-pound predator capable of killing him with a single swipe. The bear took a step back, as if understanding he needed space. David hesitated, his heart pounding, the voice of reason screaming that he should lock the door and call the wildlife authorities. But something in the animal's gaze touched him deeply. "I don't know if this is crazy or if I'm dreaming," he whispered, slowly approaching the cub. "But I'll try to help." The bear remained still, watching his every move intently. David examined the cub without touching it, confirming his initial suspicions. "Plant poisoning. He's still breathing, but he's very weak," he said, looking at the bear as if she could understand him. "I'll need a few things from inside." Slowly, he went back into the cabin, his hands shaking as he prepared an antidote with medicinal herbs he grew. He had left the profession after the tragedy, but had kept his knowledge and basic supplies out of habit. When he returned to the porch, the bear was exactly where he'd left her, standing guard beside her cub. With deliberately slow movements, David approached and administered the improvised antidote, a mix of activated charcoal and herbs to help neutralize the toxins. "This should help, but it'll take some time," he explained, again speaking as if the animal could understand him. The next few hours were surreal. The bear stayed on the porch, occasionally sniffing her cub, who was slowly showing signs of recovery. David kept his distance, watching through the window, unable to believe what was happening. Every now and then, he stepped out to check on the cub, always under the mother bear's watchful gaze. "He's getting better," he told the bear. At dusk, when the cub moved its paws and let out a small whimper, "But he still needs rest." Night fell over the Blue Ridge Mountains, and David prepared for bed, still bewildered by the day's events. For the first time in 2 years, it wasn't the emptiness left by Emily that filled his thoughts before sleep, but the image of that bear, with eyes as expressive as a human's. At dawn, David cautiously opened the porch door, expecting to find it empty. To his surprise, the bear was still there, now with her cub sitting beside her, visibly recovered, though still weak. "You should go," he said softly. "If anyone sees you here, they'll call the authorities." As if understanding the warning, the bear rose onto her hind legs, her impressive size making David instinctively step back. But she simply stared at him for a few seconds before lowering herself and gently nudging her cub toward the edge of the porch. Together they disappeared among the trees, leaving David with the feeling he had lived a dream. But it wasn't a dream, and that encounter would only be the beginning of a journey that would forever change the life of the lonely veterinarian. 3 days later, David was gathering firewood when he heard a familiar noise. The spectacled bear had returned, this time without her cub. She kept a safe distance, simply watching him. "Is your cub okay?" he asked, feeling ridiculous for talking to a wild animal. The bear took a few steps closer, then turned, looking back as if she wanted him to follow. David hesitated, torn between curiosity and common sense. "You want me to follow you? This is completely crazy." Despite his reluctance, he grabbed his backpack with basic first aid supplies and followed the animal at a safe distance. After 15 minutes of walking, they reached a small clearing. The cub was there, playing with another bear cub who seemed weaker than the first. "Oh, I see. You have another sick cub," he murmured, observing the similar but less severe signs of poisoning. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now back to the story. David kept his distance, assessing the situation. This second cub might have eaten the same toxic plants but in smaller amounts. Carefully, he prepared another dose of the antidote and left it in a small container on the ground, stepping back afterward. The bear approached the container, sniffed it, and then, to David's astonishment, guided the sick cub toward it as if encouraging it to drink. The little bear drank the liquid, and the mother turned her gaze back to David. "You're welcome," he said, still in disbelief at the intelligence he was witnessing. "I'll come back tomorrow to check on him." In the following days, David began documenting his extraordinary encounter. As a scientist, he knew he was witnessing something unprecedented. The communication he had established with that bear defied everything he had learned about animal behavior. In his notes, he named the bear Bella, recalling the name his late wife had wanted for the daughter they never had. A week after the first encounter, David received an unexpected visit. Sarah Miller, his closest neighbor, who lived nearly 3 miles away, showed up at his door with a worried expression. "David, you need to be careful. There's a spectacled bear with cubs roaming the area. Mike, the tour guide, saw tracks near the creek and warned everyone." "Thanks for the heads up, Sarah," he replied cautiously. "You know what this means, don't you? If the wildlife authorities find out, they'll capture them and send them to some zoo, or worse, put them down if they think they're dangerous." David felt a tightness in his chest. He had considered that possibility, but hearing someone say it out loud made the threat feel more real. "I understand your concern, but maybe it's for the best. Wild animals belong in proper sanctuaries," he replied, trying to sound rational even though he felt otherwise. "I don't know, David. You more than anyone should know some animals have special connections with humans. Remember your Emily? How she always said animals understood her?" The mention of his wife's name made David pale. Emily had been a biologist and always defended controversial theories about animal consciousness, something he, as a traditional veterinarian, had often questioned while she was alive. "Sarah, this is different," he cut in, uncomfortable with where the conversation was going. "I'm just saying, David, sometimes there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in our philosophy. Be careful." After Sarah left, David couldn't shake his unease. The connection he had formed with Bella the bear deeply troubled him, not just as a scientist, but as a man. There was something in that animal's gaze that reminded him of Emily, the same determination, the same unshakable confidence. That afternoon he made a decision. Walking to where he usually found the bears, he left an offering of fruit and more natural medicine, hoping Bella would appear. It didn't take long. She emerged from the trees now with her 2 healthy cubs by her side. "Hello, Bella," he said softly, using her name aloud for the first time. "You're in danger, you know. People have already noticed your presence." The spectacled bear tilted her head, as if processing his words. "I need to find a safer place for you." In the days that followed, David began to plan. North of his property lay a more isolated area, with natural caves and access to water. It was private land, part of an abandoned environmental reserve tied up in inheritance disputes for years. If he could lead the bears there, they'd have a better chance of surviving without human interference. But his plan was interrupted by an unexpected call. It was his old colleague, Robert Anderson, now director of the Department of Wildlife Protection. "David, we need to talk." Robert's voice was serious over the phone. "There have been reports of a family of spectacled bears in your area. You know they're not native here and pose a potential ecological imbalance, not to mention the risk to the local population." "And what do you plan to do?" David asked, trying to keep the tension from his voice. "Follow protocol. Capture, assessment, and relocation to a proper sanctuary. In the best-case scenario, of course." "And the worst?" There was an uncomfortable silence before Robert answered. "You know how this works, David. If they pose an immediate threat or are sick, options are limited." "I see," he replied curtly. "When are you coming?" "The team arrives in 3 days. I'd like you to assist us given your expertise." David hung up, his mind racing. 3 days. That's how much time he had to decide what to do. That night he couldn't sleep. Memories of Emily blended with images of Bella and her cubs. He recalled one of the last arguments he'd had with his wife before the accident. "Animals feel and think in ways our science doesn't fully understand yet, David," Emily had said with that conviction that always irritated and fascinated him at the same time. "One day you'll see that." Now staring out the window at the dark forest, he wondered if that moment had come, if Bella was living proof of what Emily had always believed. At dawn, he made his choice. He visited Sarah and entrusted her with a partial secret. "I need your help to distract the authorities when they arrive. Can you do that for me?" "This is about the bears, isn't it?" she asked, her eyes shining with a mix of worry and excitement. "What are you planning, David?" "The less you know, the better. I just need more time." Sarah nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'll do what I can. But be careful, David. It's not just the bears in danger here." The next morning, David drove to the northern edge of his property, bordering the abandoned reserve. It was rough terrain, hard to access, perfect for what he had in mind. He built a temporary shelter with food and water, hoping Bella would understand his intent. That afternoon, he found the bear near their usual spot. The cubs looked fully recovered, playing together while their mother kept watch. "Bella, I need you to trust me now," he said, pointing north. "People are coming to capture you. I need to show you a safer place." To his astonishment, the spectacled bear seemed to understand. She gathered her cubs with a low grunt and looked at David, as if expecting him to lead the way. For over 2 hours, he guided the small bear family through the dense forest until they reached the shelter he had prepared. "Stay here for a while," he instructed, feeling less ridiculous by the minute for talking to the animals. "I'll come back when it's safe." When he returned to his cabin, he was met with an unpleasant surprise. A Department of Wildlife Protection Jeep was parked outside his door, and Robert was waiting on the porch. "They came early," David noted, trying to mask his nervousness. "That's right, there was a bear attack at a campsite 12 miles from here. No one was seriously hurt, but we had to speed up the operation," Robert explained, watching him carefully. "You seem tense, David. Something wrong?" "No, just surprised to see you. I thought you weren't coming until the day after tomorrow." Robert smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "David, we've been friends for years. Don't underestimate me. Your neighbor Sarah did a terrible job trying to delay us with that wild story about mountain lions in the opposite direction." David felt his blood run cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. And there's more. We found fresh bear tracks near your cabin. From the pattern, it's the same bear from the attacked campsite." Robert paused meaningfully. "Where are they, David?" "I don't know. I only saw them once, from a distance," he lied, avoiding direct eye contact with his old colleague. Robert sighed deeply. "Listen, I'm not here to judge your connection with these animals. I know how much you suffered after losing Emily. I know this isolation has changed something in you. But think rationally. These bears don't belong in this ecosystem. And if they're the ones that attacked the campsite, they're potentially dangerous." Anger flared inside David. They wouldn't attack unprovoked. The campers probably trespassed on their territory or threatened the cubs. "That doesn't matter in the protocol, and you know it." Robert placed a hand on his shoulder. "We have tranquilizers and a specialized team. They'll be treated humanely and relocated to a proper sanctuary. It's what's best for them." "How can you be so sure?" David challenged. "Have you ever considered there might be more to these animals than our science can explain?" Robert stepped back, surprised by David's intensity. "Now you sound just like Emily." Maybe she was right all along. A heavy silence fell between the two men. Finally, Robert sighed. "I'll give you 24 hours, David, for our friendship. After that, I'll have to follow protocol, with or without your cooperation. And if I find out you're hiding these bears..." He left the threat hanging. After Robert left, David rushed to the refuge, finding Bella and the cubs exactly where he'd left them. The bear stood up when she saw him, as if sensing his distress. "I need to take you farther away," he said breathlessly. "You're not safe. Here." Dear listener, If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to the story. All through the night, David led the bears through the dense forest, heading north where he knew the refuge stretched for miles before reaching any human settlement. By dawn, they were exhausted, having traveled over 9 miles. This should be safe for now, he murmured, watching Bella settle with her cubs in a small natural cave. When he got home, David found his phone filled with dozens of missed calls. Most were from Robert, but one was from Sarah. He called his neighbor first. "David, thank goodness." Her voice was frantic. "Where have you been?" "I just got back home." "What happened?" "Things have gotten worse. That bear really attacked someone at the campground. A tourist is hospitalized with serious injuries. And they're blaming you for not warning them about the bear's presence earlier." "That's impossible," he protested. "Bella was with me all night. I took her to—" He stopped himself, realizing he was saying too much. "Bella? You named the bear?" Sarah sounded incredulous. "David, you need to be careful. Robert is furious. He came here to question me and said you could face criminal charges for obstruction and even for endangering lives." David's mind raced. "If Bella didn't attack anyone, then there are more bears in the area," Sarah finished, understanding dawning in her voice. "This changes everything. I need to talk to Robert. He has to understand." But before he could make the call, he heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Through the window, he saw 3 trucks from the Department of Wildlife Protection and 2 environmental police cars parking in front of his cabin. Robert was the first to step out, his face a mask of professional determination. "David Thompson, we need you to come with us to answer questions about your involvement with wild bears that pose a threat to public safety." "Robert, you don't understand. The bear I know isn't the one that attacked the campground. She was with me all night." "And how can you prove that?" Robert asked skeptically. David hesitated. His only proof was his word and his inexplicable connection with Bella. "I can't, but I know it's true, and if there are other bears, we need to find them before anyone else gets hurt." To his surprise, Robert seemed to consider his words. "We have reports suggesting at least 5 spectacled bears are in the area. Apparently, there was an unauthorized release a few years ago, and they've adapted too well to the environment." "So you believe me? Let's say I'm willing to hear your theory. But I need your full cooperation, David. No more lies or evasions." In the hours that followed, David partially explained his relationship with Bella, only omitting how deep his connection with the animal truly was. He described how the bear had brought her sick cub to him and how he had helped treat the 2 little ones. "It's unprecedented behavior," Robert admitted after hearing everything. "But it doesn't change the fact that they're wild animals in an unnatural habitat. Removal is still the best option." "What if there's another possibility?" David suggested. "What if we create an official reserve right here? This area is already considered a private refuge, just abandoned administratively. With the department's support, we could turn it into a sanctuary for endangered species." Robert smiled, shaking his head. "Always the idealist, just like Emily. Do you know how many approvals, permits, and funding that would take?" "I know. It's possible if we're willing," David insisted. "And think of the scientific precedent. A group of spectacled bears adapting to a new environment, showing non-aggressive behavior toward humans. It's a valuable case study." Robert's expression softened slightly. "I'll consider your proposal, but on one condition. You help us. Locate and assess all the bears in the area. Any deemed dangerous will be removed. No exceptions." David agreed, knowing it was the best deal he'd get. In the following days, he and the department team mapped the area, set up cameras, and began documenting the bear's presence. As suspected, there was another group besides Bella and her cubs, an adult male and a younger female, likely from the same original release. "These are the ones that attacked the campground," Robert confirmed, reviewing the camera footage. "The male shows typical aggressive territorial behavior. We'll have to remove him." "What about Bella?" David asked anxiously. Robert studied him for a moment. "Her case is intriguing. If we can properly document this peaceful interaction, there might be a chance to keep her here as part of a research program." Hope blossomed in David's chest. "I could coordinate. So that program, I have the necessary training and know the territory. You left your career 2 years ago, David, Robert gently reminded. Are you sure you're ready to come back? David thought of Emily, how she always believed in the healing power animals had. He thought of Bella and her cubs, and how that unlikely connection had awakened him to life again. I'm more than ready. I think I've finally found my purpose, again. In the weeks that followed, a carefully planned operation was carried out. The male bear and the younger female were sedated and transported to a specialized sanctuary in the southern part of the country. Bella and her cubs stayed, now officially part of a groundbreaking research program on adaptive behavior in large mammals. David's old property was incorporated into the reactivated reserve, and a small research station was established, with him as the scientific coordinator. The news of the man who communicated with bears spread quickly, attracting media and scientific attention. To everyone's surprise, Bella continued displaying exceptional behavior, staying close to the research station and allowing observations from a safe distance. The cubs grew up healthy, developing a fascinating mix of natural, wild behavior and controlled interaction with researchers. 6 months after the program began, David received an unexpected visit. Jennifer Wilson, a renowned primatologist, arrived at the station with an intriguing proposal. I've heard about your work with these spectacled bears, and I'm fascinated, she said as they watched Bella and the cubs from a distance. Especially this female, Bella. There are similar reports from other parts of the world, you know, large mammals showing levels of empathy and interspecies communication that challenge our current understanding. Emily always believed in that, David replied, a wistful smile on his face. She said we were just scratching the surface of what animals are capable of understanding and feeling. Jennifer studied him with interest. You know what I think? That Bella is a positive anomaly, a behavioral evolution accelerated by the need to adapt to a new environment. What you've documented here could shift paradigms in behavioral biology. Or maybe she's just a very smart bear who learned to trust one specific human, David suggested, though he didn't really believe it. Maybe. But what if it's more? What if we're witnessing something truly revolutionary? The conversation was interrupted by the station's alert system. The monitoring cameras had detected unusual movement on the northern perimeter. David checked the footage, and his heart raced. It's the male bear! He's back! Impossible! Jennifer exclaimed. He was relocated over 300 miles from here. Apparently he found his way back, David replied, watching the footage with concern. And he seems determined. In the following days, tension grew in the reserve. The male bear moved closer and closer to Bella's territory, displaying aggressive territorial behavior. David's team set up a monitoring perimeter, prepared to intervene if necessary. I don't understand why he came back, said Robert, who had returned to the reserve after receiving the alert. It's not natural behavior to travel such a distance. Maybe he has a bond with Bella or the cubs, David suggested. Maybe he's the father. Or maybe it's just a territorial animal that knows this environment and wants to claim it, Robert countered. Either way, we can't take the risk. If it becomes aggressive again, we'll have to remove it permanently. The words hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Remove permanently meant putting the animal down, something David couldn't accept. There has to be another solution, he insisted. We need to understand what's happening here. The next morning, David woke to the sound of distant roars. He quickly left the research station and followed the noise, ignoring safety protocols. What he found left him frozen. Bella and the male bear were less than 100 yards apart, in a natural clearing. The cubs stayed behind their mother, who held a defensive stance. The male, however, showed no direct aggression. Instead, he placed something on the ground between them. David used his binoculars and identified the object, a small bear cub apparently injured. My God, he murmured, finally understanding. He has another cub, and it's sick. This revelation changed everything. The male bear hadn't returned out of territoriality, but out of necessity. Just as Bella had sought David months earlier, now, the male was seeking Bella, perhaps the only spectacled bear in the region who knew how to get help for a sick cub. David immediately radioed the team. I need medical equipment in the northern sector now, and keep your distance. I'm going. to try to approach. "Are you crazy?" Robert's voice crackled over the radio, alarmed. "That male is dangerous. Trust me, I think I understand what's happening." With his heart pounding, David slowly approached the clearing, making sure his movements were deliberate and visible. Bella noticed him first, and to his surprise, she stepped back, as if giving him space to approach the injured cub. The male bear rose onto his hind legs, imposing and threatening. David stopped, maintaining eye contact but showing no fear. "I know why you're here," he said softly, "and I'll help." Slowly, the bear dropped back to all fours, still watchful but no longer aggressive. David moved closer to the fallen cub and quickly examined it. The injuries appeared to be from a fall, including a possibly broken front leg. "I need help transporting it to the station," he radioed. "Traumatic injuries, possible fracture." To the astonishment of the team watching from a distance, the two adult bears allowed David to tend to the injured cub, staying close but not interfering. It was unprecedented behavior, a display of trust that defied everything known about wild animals. "It's extraordinary," Jennifer murmured, joining the rescue team. "It's like they know exactly why we're here and what we intend to do." The cub was sedated and taken to the station, where it received proper treatment. The fracture was confirmed and immobilized, and medication was given to prevent infection. Throughout the process, the adult bears remained nearby, watching intently. "I've never seen anything like this," Robert admitted, his earlier skepticism gone. "It's like we're witnessing a form of interspecies communication science hasn't documented yet." "Or maybe it has been documented, and we just weren't paying attention," David replied, remembering Emily's controversial papers on animal intelligence, which the scientific community had dismissed as excessive anthropomorphism. In the days that followed, a new arrangement emerged in the refuge. The male bear, whom David began calling Ranger, established territory on the outskirts, keeping a respectful distance from the research station, but visiting regularly to check on the recovering cub. Jennifer remained at the refuge, fascinated by what she was witnessing. "You know what this means, don't you?" she asked David one evening as they reviewed the day's observations. "We're seeing evidence that large mammals like these can establish meaningful communication with humans and with each other on levels we once thought impossible." "Emily would have been overjoyed," he replied with a sad smile. "This was exactly what she was trying to prove." "Maybe she did through you," Jennifer suggested gently. "Maybe this is her legacy." The story of the refuge and its extraordinary bears began gaining national and international attention. Researchers from various institutions requested permission to visit and study the phenomenon. What had started as a rescue operation had turned into a groundbreaking animal cognition research project. But not all the news was good. With recognition came private interests. A major mining company revealed plans to exploit areas adjacent to the refuge, citing old permits obtained before its protected status was reinstated. "This could ruin everything," Robert warned, showing David the documents he had obtained. Mining activity would drive the bears away and could contaminate the refuge's water resources. "We can't allow it," David replied firmly. "These animals trusted us. We have a responsibility to them." The legal battle that followed was intense. The mining company had resources and influence, but David had powerful allies. The growing international scientific community, fascinated by the refuge's bears, and the public, who had fallen in love with the story of the man who talks to bears, as the media had dubbed him. At a decisive public hearing in the small town near the refuge, David presented scientific evidence, videos, and data demonstrating the exceptional value of the ongoing research. "What we've discovered here transcends immediate economic interests," he argued with an eloquence that surprised even his allies. "We're beginning to understand aspects of animal consciousness that could revolutionize our relationship with other species. This knowledge is priceless." The mining company's representative countered, "We understand the research's value, but our operation would create hundreds of jobs and economic growth for the region. Besides, these bears pose a potential risk to nearby communities. The attack on the camp proves that." The debate grew heated until Sarah, who had stood by David from the beginning, asked to speak. "I've lived near this refuge for over 30 years," she began, her voice calm but firm. "I've seen this land go through many changes. I've watched forests be cut down and rivers dry up. I've seen wildlife slowly disappear. And now, for the first time in decades, I'm witnessing something extraordinary happen. Nature giving us a second chance." She paused, looking directly at the mining representative. "You talk about progress and jobs, but you don't talk about the real cost. This isn't just a piece of land with a few bears. It's a living laboratory that could teach us how to coexist with other species in ways we never thought possible." Her words had a profound impact on the audience. When the final vote took place, the mining proposal was rejected, and the refuge was granted expanded protection as a national scientific research area of interest. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On the night after the victory, David found himself on the porch of his cabin, now transformed into part of the research station. Bella and her cubs were at the edge of the forest, visible under the moonlight. Ranger, further away, maintained his constant watch. "We did it," he said softly to the bears, as if they could understand him. And perhaps they could. "You're safe now." Jennifer joined him on the porch, handing him a cup of coffee. "Do you know what's most extraordinary about all this?" she asked, gazing at the bears. "It's not just that these animals show exceptional cognitive abilities. It's that they chose to trust you specifically." David thought for a moment, remembering the day Bella appeared on his porch with her sick cub. "Maybe it's not a coincidence," he finally said. "Emily used to spend hours in these woods, studying the animals. She was known for making remarkable connections with typically skittish species. What if Bella knew her? What if somehow she knew she could trust me because she trusted Emily?" Jennifer didn't answer right away, considering the possibility. It would be extraordinary but not impossible. Large mammals have long-term memory and facial recognition. If Bella encountered Emily in the past, that would explain why she sought me out specifically, David finished. Why she trusted me to help her cub. "It's a fascinating theory," Jennifer agreed, "and perfectly testable with the right time and resources." In the following months, the refuge flourished, becoming an international hub for animal cognition research. David led the studies, now fully reconnected with his scientific calling. Bella, Ranger, and their cubs continued to surprise researchers with increasingly sophisticated communication and cooperative behaviors. On a hot summer afternoon, as David watched the bears interact with a new researcher on the team, he felt a presence beside him. It was Sarah, smiling with a serene expression. "You know, I always thought Emily had a special gift," she said, "a connection with animals that went beyond science, and now you have that same connection." David nodded, reflecting on the incredible journey of the past few months. "I think I always did, but I wasn't ready to see it. I needed Bella to show up on my porch to understand what Emily always knew." "And what was that?" Sarah asked gently. "That communication goes beyond words. That trust transcends species, and sometimes animals understand things about us that even we don't." At that moment, as if hearing her name, Bella looked directly at David. Her dark eyes shone with an intelligence he now fully recognized. It wasn't just instinct or conditioned behavior. It was genuine understanding. "Thank you for trusting me," David whispered, knowing that somehow she understood. A year after the first encounter with Bella, the refugee officially became the Emily Thompson Center for Animal Cognition Research, a tribute to the woman whose vision had been the catalyst for it all, even after her passing. At the opening ceremony, David was nervous. It was his first formal public appearance since leaving academia after losing Emily. Jennifer, now the center's scientific director, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "She would be so proud," she said gently. David nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Then he took a deep breath and stepped onto the small stage set up for the occasion. Before him were researchers, officials, journalists, and locals, all united by their fascination with the extraordinary story of the communicative bears. "2 years ago, I believed my life had ended when I lost Emily," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion. "I shut myself off from the world, gave up the science we loved, stopped believing there was any purpose in going on." He paused, gazing toward the forest's edge where, surprisingly, Bella watched from a distance, her now larger and more independent cubs by her side. Then, one ordinary morning, a desperate, spectacled bear appeared on my porch with her unconscious cub. That moment changed everything. Not only did I save her cub, but she saved me. Bella gave me back the purpose I'd lost. She reminded me that life goes on, even after the most devastating losses. She reconnected me with Emily's legacy in ways I never thought possible. His eyes welled up, but he pressed on, determined. What we've discovered here isn't just about animal behavior or advanced cognition. It's about connection. It's about trust. It's about recognizing that we share this planet with other conscious minds, capable of deep understanding and interspecies empathy. And maybe, just maybe, they understand things about us that we're still learning about ourselves. As he finished his speech, a round of applause broke out. Jennifer hugged him, whispering "perfect" in his ear. Robert, now a fervent advocate for the refuge, shook his hand with unmistakable respect and admiration. The opening celebration lasted until dusk, but eventually the guests departed, leaving David alone on his porch. In the twilight silence, he heard a familiar rustling. Bella emerged from the forest, this time without her cubs, and approached, closer than usual. She stopped a few yards from the porch, her eyes locked on David with that piercing intensity he now knew so well. For a moment, they stood like that, man and bear, in a silent dialogue that transcended words or gestures. Then something extraordinary happened. Bella briefly rose onto her hind legs, made a movement that almost resembled a boo, and turned back toward the forest. Before disappearing among the trees, she glanced back one last time, and David could have sworn that, for a fleeting instant, he saw in her eyes the same spark he'd seen in Emily's when she spoke of her connection to nature. A glimmer of deep knowing, of understanding that went beyond what science could explain. That night, as he gazed at the stars above the forest, that was now his living laboratory. David felt a peace he hadn't known since before the tragedy. The pain of loss would never fully fade, but he'd found a new path, a new purpose, and it had all started with a desperate mother bear who, in some inexplicable way, had known exactly where to go for help when her cub was sick. An act of trust that defied conventional explanations but had transformed lives, both human and ursine. The Emily Thompson Center quickly established itself as an internationally renowned research institution. Scientists from around the world visited to observe the bear's extraordinary behavior, especially Bella, who continued demonstrating levels of interspecies communication that challenged established scientific paradigms. The most remarkable case occurred 6 months after the opening. A researcher from the center was alone collecting data when she took a serious fall in a remote area of the refuge, fracturing her leg and losing her communication equipment, unable to move and beyond the reach of immediate search protocols. Her situation was potentially fatal. It was Bella who found her. Instead of simply ignoring her or posing a threat, the bear returned to the research center and displayed such specific agitated behavior that David immediately suspected something was wrong. "She's trying to tell us something," he said, watching the bear make repetitive motions in a particular direction. Following Bella at a safe distance, the rescue team found the injured researcher, saving her life. The incident was thoroughly documented and published in prestigious scientific journals, sparking heated debates about animal consciousness and interspecies communication. For David, however, it was no surprise. He had learned to trust Bella's intelligence and empathy as much as he would trust any human colleague. "Some call it instinct," he remarked to Jennifer after the successful rescue, "but I call it understanding." She knew a human was in danger and understood she could seek help from us. "This challenges everything we thought we knew about animal cognition," Jennifer replied, amazed. "We're just beginning to grasp what's possible." Over the years, Bella's cubs grew up and eventually went their own ways in the expanded refuge, which now covered an area 5 times larger than the original thanks to international recognition and funding the project had received. Ranger kept his territory farther away, visiting occasionally, always respectful of the boundaries established with the humans at the station. New spectacled bears were carefully introduced over time, creating a healthy, stable population that served as a model for conservation projects worldwide. On a cool autumn morning, 5 years after first meeting Bella, David walked along a familiar trail when he came across something unexpected. Bella sat peacefully near a small natural shrine he had built in memory of Emily, right where she used to love watching the sunrise. The bear didn't move as he approached, only watched him with those deep eyes that always seemed to hold more wisdom than they should. "You miss her too, don't you?" David murmured, sitting at a respectful distance. Bella tilted her head slightly, as she always did when he spoke directly to her. David smiled, remembering how Emily had insisted animals understood more of our words than we imagined. "You know, sometimes I think you knew her," he continued softly, "that somehow you trusted me because you trusted her." The bear remained still, except for her watchful eyes that never left his. "Or maybe," he went on, his voice almost a whisper, "maybe she found a way to speak to me through you." It was a thought he'd kept private, even from Jennifer or Sarah. It seemed too mystical, too irrational for a scientist. But in that moment, alone with Bella at the sacred spot dedicated to Emily's memory, he allowed himself the vulnerability of that possibility. Then Bella rose, coming closer than safety protocols would ever allow. David stayed perfectly still, trusting the animal who had transformed his life completely. The bear stretched her muzzle, sniffing the air near his face, then gently touched his shoulder with her paw, a gesture she had never made before, breaking all the physical barriers they had maintained for years. Just as suddenly as she had approached, Bella retreated and vanished silently into the forest, leaving David with tears in his eyes and an inexplicable sense of peace and closure. That afternoon, back at the station, he found Jennifer analyzing data in the main lab. "I need to tell you something," he said, sitting beside her. "Something that might sound irrational, unscientific." Jennifer smiled, setting the papers aside. "After everything we've witnessed here these past few years, I think we've redefined what we call rational or scientific, haven't we?" David nodded and shared his experience from that morning, including the thought he had kept to himself for so long. "I know it sounds absurd to suggest that Bella might have any connection to Emily beyond possibly having met her when she was still alive," he concluded. "But today when she touched me, I felt something I can't explain, as if the circle had finally closed." Jennifer didn't mock his experience as he had feared. Instead, she considered it thoughtfully before replying, "Science is always evolving. David, what we thought impossible yesterday becomes the subject of study today and established knowledge tomorrow. I can't explain the specific connection you feel between Bella, yourself, and the memory of Emily. But I do know that animal cognition, consciousness, and the capacity for emotional connection are frontiers we've only just begun to explore properly." She smiled, placing a hand on his. "Perhaps some connections simply transcend our current ability to measure or explain them. And maybe that's perfectly acceptable, even for scientists like us." The next night, David found something on his desk that hadn't been there before, Emily's old notebook, which he thought he'd lost years ago. Confused, he asked everyone at the station, but no one knew how it had gotten there. Flipping through the pages, he found an entry dated just weeks before the accident that had taken her life. In it, Emily described an extraordinary encounter with a young spectacled bear that had approached her fearlessly during a field study. "She looked directly into my eyes in a way I'd never experienced before," Emily had written, "as if she truly saw me, not just as a potential threat or source of food, but as an equal in consciousness." David would call it anthropomorphism, of course, but there's something about this particular animal that transcends our current scientific categories, something that makes me question everything we thought we knew about the animal mind. At the bottom of the page, a final note made David freeze. "I named her Bella, wisdom, because I feel she has so much to teach us, if only we're willing to learn." David closed the notebook, his hands trembling. The mystery of how it had reappeared would remain unsolved, just like so many other questions. But one thing was certain: The connection between Emily, Bella, and himself was real, no matter how science might eventually explain it. The next day, a documentary film crew arrived at the station. The Emily Thompson Center had been chosen for a series on groundbreaking advances in understanding animal intelligence. David, initially reluctant about media attention, now embraced it as an opportunity to share Emily's legacy with the world. What we've discovered here isn't just about spectacled bears or animal behavior, he explained to the camera as they walked through the refuge. It's about rethinking our relationship with other species, recognizing abilities we've long denied or underestimated. The documentary director, impressed by the accounts, asked, "And this particular bear, Bella, do you believe there's something truly unique about her?" David smiled, glancing toward the forest, where he knew Bella watched, always nearby, but respecting the presence of strangers. "I believe Bella is extraordinary, yes, but I also believe she shows us potentials that may exist in many animals, if only we learn to recognize and respect them properly." That night, after the film crew had left, David sat on his porch, gazing at the starry sky. A familiar figure emerged from the edge of the forest, Bella, now visibly older but still majestic, with those eyes that always seemed to hold universes of understanding. "Thank you," he said simply, knowing that somehow she understood not just the words but the feeling behind them. The spectacled bear lingered for a moment, as she always did, in that silent communication they had developed over the years. Then, with one last glance, she turned and disappeared into the forest's darkness, leaving David with the quiet certainty that she would return, as she always had. The refuge continued to grow and thrive. New researchers arrived, some skeptical, others already convinced by the extraordinary accounts. All left transformed by the experience of witnessing the unique communication between humans and bears that unfolded there. The case of the desperate mother bear who had brought her unconscious cub to a man isolated by grief had become a catalyst for a quiet revolution in behavioral science and conservation. What David had done, the unbelievable act of trusting a wild spectacled bear and earning her trust in return, had opened doors many believed were permanently closed. And though Bella eventually grew old and, like all living creatures, completed her natural cycle, her legacy lived on through the cubs she had raised, through the refuge she had inspired, and through the fundamental shift in how the humans involved came to view their relationship with the natural world. The Emily Thompson Center became world famous not just as a sanctuary for spectacled bears, but as a beacon of possibility for interspecies relationships built on mutual respect and genuine communication. And David, the man who had once lost all hope, found not only a new purpose but a deeper understanding of what Emily had always tried to show him, that the heart of true science lies not in separating and categorizing, but in connecting and understanding. The story of the desperate mother bear who brought her unconscious cub to a man, and the unbelievable thing he did to help her, became more than an extraordinary anecdote. It became a symbol of possibilities that would continue to inspire future generations of scientists, conservationists, and nature lovers to look beyond the barriers we believed existed between us and the other conscious minds with whom we share this planet. The end. What did you think of this story of unlikely connection? Have you ever witnessed a special moment between humans and animals? Share your experience in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.